here. question whether it was last or
How are things going for you? How are things going for you? Yeah. That's the one I showed up for. Yeah.
We had 184 that night.
Yeah.
243.
Yeah, indeed.
How many? 243. To me, that seems great. Are you happy with that? Yeah, yeah. Good.
Yeah, we're all sore. We ended up with 5 of those workers in section. Still sore.
And working the show down. It looked great. I mean, the show looked great. I love when they actually were after the fizzy lifting drinks. I guess maybe I'd heard that was happening, but I didn't see it. It's like, that definitely makes this light. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
This was a great show to prove that
right.
I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We have someone on board who's Bob.
Right. Right. Now the like, okay, that's right, of course.
Yeah, so now we've got the experience and knowledge to put things up and see what's correct. So, this creates a lot of opportunities for the future.
Yes, for sure.
And we told people from our copies that yes, we're flying. Right. Sales. Because they knew that we weren't trying to do some kind of cheap copy.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I think people were really surprised when they saw that.
Thought it looked great. So, excellent. And remind me, I should be able to put in next on for live feed or what's next on the
So for live feed, we have our musical Christmas program.
Got it.
We're going to the bunch of
and then there's one after that, is that on? Or when is it?
No, then we're going to go from house manager to
yeah.
and then honk in the spring.
Okay.
We'll do honk in the spring and then adult shows, and then that will be kids shows. So we can use the same props.
Nice.
So they have asked about standing up. So if they stand up, we're not losing camera, we're just losing mic. Do they stand up and move the mic? You prefer them not to move the mic?
It shouldn't be touching the mics because every time we go up, they hear it.
It's going to be this. Okay. Why do I always get these questions?
Oh, God.
I gave them all those pictures.
I'm certain of that. How are things out in Town Hill, up in the corner?
It's weird right now. We've had a lot of people because they're fighting the deer because they don't have to run out.
Right.
So the deer population is going to lose their shades. So, you know, it's like danger or something down on the property. It's like, by the way, watch your cats.
Okay. She has chickens, right? She's got one chickens.
Yeah, and she has something to do with chickens. So we're going to fence them down.
Maximum security coop.
Yep, pretty much.
I used that chicken. It wasn't a coyote, but something I didn't mind. It's like disheartening to like it's like a minute it was just chaos. So I empathize with that point.
We thought about doing goats, and if I could, I'd do ducks.
Okay. Yeah.
I'd have to do chickens. It's like we got to protect all of the place.
That's true.
Right.
We all have our own personal mistakes.
Right now, I try to keep the deer out of my garden so that we can actually grow fruit trees and stuff. I know our new Fox has that problem too. I set up in his yard. Okay. He's got a cedar tree that he planted. And he would sit there and watch that deer come up and look at that. And he's sitting there and he told me, I sit there and work my camera like, what you get? Don't you even think about it? Back right away.
Yeah, my parents are.
Yeah, we're already live. We're ready, so you guys start whenever you're ready.
You might want one.
My name is Car. Good evening, folks. How is everyone this evening? Thank you for being here. My name is Cara Romano. I'm the Executive Director of Heart of Ellsworth. I want to thank you all for being here for our 5th annual Meet the Candidates event. This nonpartisan production aims to educate the voting residents of Ellsworth. Events like these raise awareness of local issues and connect community members to participate in our local democracy. They allow us to learn about our candidates and what they stand for and how they might represent each one of us. Every candidate running for a seat in the Ellsworth City Council has been invited to participate in this evening event. Thank you all for being here and for offering your time and your expertise. This evening is an opportunity to strengthen civil, political discourse in our community. These city council positions, like all municipal positions, are nonpartisan. Small towns and cities are a place where everyone can enter the political arena to make a difference in their communities. During this time in American politics, events like these are an excellent way to strengthen the democratic process, build trust in institutions, and allow citizens to start to make the changes they want to see in their towns. As Ellsworth residents, it's your individual privilege and responsibility to participate in our local municipal democracy, ensuring greater community engagement and guidance in guiding the future governance of the city. Tonight, it's also the responsibility of each of us to remain respectful of each other, not only to listen thoughtfully, but to try and remain open to others' points of views. We must trust that though they may have differing views, each candidate wants what's best for our city. The opinions expressed during this event are those of the candidates. They do not reflect opinions of our views, of our sponsor, Eden Peabody, the Ellsworth American, or of Heart of Ellsworth. Rather, each of these entities serves merely to provide a platform to get to know these candidates as democratic service to our community. Thank you all for your time. Heart of Ellsworth would also like to thank a few people and organizations who helped to make the event possible. As I said, this evening, our lead sponsor is Eden Peabody, and our longtime partner is the Ellsworth American. The grand staff, Nick Turner, Kim Fitch, and Peter Miller, have made this evening a beautiful event for all of us in providing this wonderful space that's sort of the heart of our creative community. I also want to thank the City of Ellsworth's IT staff, Jason Ingalls and Nate Burkhart. They are live streaming the event via the City of Ellsworth's Facebook platform as well as YouTube channel. I also want to thank our city clerk, Tony Dyer, who provided a lot of information that has been pushed out to the public via our social media platforms. And I also want to thank a couple of Heart of Ellsworth board members who have volunteered for this event for quite a few years now. Peter Leone decorated the stage, Beth Fendel for hanging posters, Lucille Poulin for keeping time, who's in the front that's going to keep everybody on time for the event, Carrie Cutney, who's greeting all of our guests, and our student board member, Drew Pearson, who's assisting each of our board members with those above tasks. So just a few house rules and reminders for everybody to turn off their cell phones, which actually, I'm going to do the same right now. I also want to remind everybody, no booing, and please hold your applause until the end. We have a lot of candidates on the stage tonight, so we're really asking everybody to refrain from applauding in between questions. Up on the table in the front room, if you didn't get one, there is polling ward information that's been provided by our city clerk, Tony Dyer. And so they're sort of photocopied, so you can take them with you so that you'll understand where all the polls are around the city when voting day comes on November 8th. And I also want to ask each of you folks to think a little bit about why you're here tonight and also supporting our organization. We do these things quite often in our community to raise awareness and education, as I said before, but the organizations like ours, we're a nonprofit, and so having folks like you support the things that we do helps it so that our organization can continue to offer this programming in our community. And the one last thing, if any of you have any questions that you were not able to submit online via our Google Form platform for the candidates, Beth Fendel, one of our board members, is going around with note cards and little golf pencils, and you're able to submit those to her for probably the next 20 minutes, and then Beth will stop taking questions. She's going to synthesize them. They will be given to Cindy Wood, our moderator from the Ellsworth American. And the ones with the most asks next will be the ones that are asked if Cindy finds that she has time. So without further ado, I want to introduce Cindy Wood, the managing editor of the Ellsworth American, who will be moderating this evening's event. Thank you all for being here. Hey everyone. Thank you so much to Cara and the Heart of Ellsworth for organizing this once again, and to the candidates for participating. All 7 wanted to be here, but one had to cancel. Kristen had to cancel earlier today. She had something come up. And Bob Miller was here, ready to go, but he had an emergency, so he had to depart. So Kristen has provided me some responses to our prepared questions, and I'll read those, and you can follow up with Bob if you have specific questions for him. The ground rules for tonight's discussion are simple. Audience members are invited to submit written questions, as Cara said, on provided note cards, and we received several dozen questions in advance via the online submission form. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to make an opening statement. All candidates will be asked to respond to 3 questions provided in advance. The order of the questioning will alternate between the candidates. For each question, the response will be limited to 2 minutes. Someone up front will be keeping time, and I'll cut folks off at the 2-minute mark. Candidates will then be presented with questions posed by their audience. Questions will be selected by me and may be reworded. Responses will be limited to 2 minutes. We ask that the other candidates and audience members refrain from speaking during a candidate's time. Finally, as Cara said, please hold any applause until the end of the evening so that we can squeeze as many of your questions as possible. So we'll jump right into opening statements. Michelle Beal, would you like to start us off?
Hi, I'm Michelle Beal. I used to be the city manager of Ellsworth. I worked for the city for 20 years. I left about 7 years ago to work for a law firm in Bangor. I think the biggest question that I keep getting asked is, why are you running? And the reason that I'm running is the obvious reason that I really do love the city of Ellsworth. I loved working for the city for 20 years. I honestly miss it. But I also feel that in the time that I worked for the city, I created and developed a lot of relationships inside and outside the city, and with state government and federal government. And I think that those skills and those relationships that I still carry with me can definitely help the city in progressing. I also think that the history that I have for the 20 years that I worked for the city can help with the progress of the city. I think that you don't want to get bogged down in the past. You don't want to keep looking back all the time. But I strongly feel that in order to progress, you have to know why and how you got to be where you are. And I think that I can help with that aspect.
John Leahy.
Thank you. I'm John Lenahan, and I excel in 3 areas, which are my major areas. I'm a Christian spiritually, meaning I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. That's number 1 in my life. Secondly, I'm an original intent constitutionalist, both our United States Constitution and our state of Maine Constitution. And I abide by it 100% by the original intent of our founding fathers. That's very important to me. And thirdly, I'm an America First, Maine First, Ellsworth First, patriotic candidate who's fighting for our freedoms. I believe that our nation's in trouble financially, I believe our state's in trouble financially, and I believe our city's in trouble financially. And I'm very conservative when it comes to financial areas, and I want to make an impact in those particular areas. I think people are hurting right now. I know people I talk with are worried about whether they're going to be able to heat their home, have gasoline, pay their taxes. So we're in a financial crisis right now. And I think we need to put a handle and put the brakes on the spending at all levels of government. My latest task is I just started and renovated the old movie theaters here in Ellsworth, and I created Constitution Hall. And the reason why I did that is I think our founding principles were biblical and constitutional in our nation. I think we've gotten away from those. So I've had national speakers, statewide speakers that have come in and try to present some of the histories of what's made our America great and our state great as well. And finally, I think the history that a lot of you maybe don't realize, well, I've been here 74 years all my life, is we have a heritage on the council of real good business people. Roger Willard, Jim Pendicus, Mark Roscoe, and several others. My own father, John Linehan, was on there. Those original people on there were very good at evaluating what were needs in our city and what were greens. Especially Steve Shea would always say, we're not going to raise the taxes one bit for the loss of spending. By the grace of God, I'd like to follow in the lead that those people set up and be the same type of council. So I'm here to search for your vote tonight, and I hope you consider me worthy.
Tammy Moe, your opening statement.
Good evening. My name is Tammy Moat. I live in the city of Ellsworth. The majority of my life, I live here with my husband and my 5 children. We own a small business, and I do understand the challenges of the small business. I worked for the city of Ellsworth also for 20 years. I started as a tax collector for 8 years, and then as a finance director for 8 years, and the deputy treasurer for, deputy city manager for 4 years. And I hate public speaking, so I think that knows me. I know all aspects of the city. There were times that I was out at nighttime helping the road crews decide where to paint the lines. I was at the transfer station, which was not a good time at all. When they were low on help, I'm familiar with all of it, and I feel that with my experience and knowledge of the city, that I would be a great candidate for the city of Ellsworth.
Channel Kristen Schlafer. Kristen was born and raised in Washington County, moving to Ellsworth 16 years ago. She has played and worked here and now owns property and is raising a child here. This is her home. She feels very fortunate to live in such a safe and beautiful city with an abundance of potential. She is seeking a spot on the council to lend her education and expertise as a financial analyst to move Ellsworth forward. She believes the Ellsworth City Council has to cease talking about employing a proactive approach and actually make it happen. A comprehensive plan is an absolute necessity. This is the way to provide all that Ellsworth needs and much of what it wants without breaking the banks of taxpayers. Kristen invites any constituent to contact her with questions. She can be found on her Facebook, and her contact information is listed in the Ellsworth American article published last week. John Stein, your opening statement.
Hi, I'm John Stein. I'm running because I'm excited about Ellsworth. I'm invested in living and working here. Like so many millennials, I lived in a bunch of different places, worked a bunch of different jobs, and I was interested in finally settling down and finding a place to make positive change somewhere. Ellsworth was the perfect place. It's beautiful, next to Acadia. It's a thriving year-round community, community of people who really care about each other. So I started building my business, Fogtown Brewing Company, about 6 years ago. This was Ellsworth's first production brewery, so it took a lot of work, not just in infrastructure and brewing beer, but in working with the city. Communication and compromise was really key. I worked closely with fire and code enforcement officers, economic development, and public works officers. I helped codify noise ordinances, improve street parking, and add public signage in efforts to improve the neighborhoods surrounding my business. I'm not going to guess anybody's age up here, okay, but if elected, I'll be the youngest on the council by at least a couple of years. So that's humbling for me. There's a lot of experience up here. But like many small business owners, I've had a crash course in everything from financing and balancing spreadsheets to permitting, licensing, staff management. Through my work with nonprofits like Heart of Ellsworth, Commercial Bay Conservancy, Healthy Acadia, I've also had experience with city appropriations. I worked to help secure substantial state and federal funding for our city in 2020. Ellsworth is exciting. We're on the brink of something really special. People who grew up here and moved away want to move back. Others, young people like myself, want to move here and join our community. I would love the opportunity to serve on the council and help plan for this kind of growth. I want to help revitalize this city in a thoughtful and responsible way. And I believe I can find common ground between our citizens, our city council, city staff, and move our city forward responsibly in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Gordon Workman, your opening statement.
Thank you. My name is Gordon Workman. I live in Ellsworth. I wanted to stand tonight, but out of respect for the audience, I'd rather would stand. But to work with this, we have to sit. And that bothers me. Because you are in charge. I am the servant. If I get on city council, I am the servant to you. You need to come see me, or if I get on, or anyone else here, you'll have to come see us. Help us help you to exceed your goals that this city needs. I see a lot of issues happening in the city on division, dividing, the whole work. I see it. I've been here for 61 years. And that's why I would this year decide to run for city council. Because I want to see it the way it was when I grew up. The community together, working as one. And that is really bothering me for the last couple of years. And that's why I'm running for city council. I grew up here. I've been in this theater over and over many times. Went to school here, raised my kids. They're still here. And I do believe I can help out to get the city in the right track again for all of you. That's why I'm here. Thank you.
Jump right into the prepared questions. The first one is, what are the greatest challenges facing Ellsworth and how would you address them? John Linehan, do you want to start that one?
I'd like to. I think the greatest, I've already touched on it in my opening remarks, I think there's no question the greatest challenge for the city of Ellsworth is how can we make it affordable again. And I think the taxes are extremely high in the city of Ellsworth, because our government is too large. I'm for a smaller government, I'm for less taxes. I actually signed a pledge stating that I would not vote, if elected, for any budget that did not contain a 5% budget reduction. And from my business experience, I've managed many businesses, over multiple businesses. I employed 250 directly and 1,000 indirectly in business. I'm used to running that type of an organization. And I believe it would be very easy in the city of Ellsworth to reduce our expenditures and to cut the taxes down. And those taxes will go back into our pocket. So it's about finances for me. And it's not just taxes, it's the cost of living that we have here. So we need to make Ellsworth affordable again with everything we can say and do. The other thing that I see that goes right along with that is I believe there's an ignorance in the city of Ellsworth. And before you get mad at me for saying ignorance, I'm not calling people ignorant. I mean only that we don't know the facts. And you can't make intelligent decisions about finances or anything else unless you know the facts. So part of what we've tried to do at Constitution Hall is have people come in that would put factual information out there so you can know both sides of the issues so you can make an intelligent decision. We definitely need to get a handle on the size of our government. We need to cut it back down. We need to make it originally the way that it was when our country was founded. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Reminder the candidates and myself, try to speak into the microphone so people can hear you in the back. Tammy, what are the greatest challenges facing Ellsworth and how would you address them?
I think our biggest challenge right now is the aging infrastructure and equipment that we have, and we have some storm county water mains that are back from the late 1800s, and I think that's an issue. While I was at the city, I had created a capital improvement policy, and this policy was made up of a committee that included counselors, it included some members of the public and the staff. The staff was asked to compile all their wishes for the next 5 years. What do you feel the needs are for the city? And I compiled this information on this big spreadsheet, and then this committee was tasked to go through it and prioritize those needs. And I feel like we need to get back to that. With COVID, they just stopped happening. And I just feel that if we could get back to that, that would certainly help us have the needs and hear from the people, and so that we can determine the best way to move forward.
Ask Kristen, who gets up next. Kristen believes Ellsworth faces many challenges and understands that different issues are important to different people. She sees the greatest challenges as economic development, keeping up with growth, walkability, housing, waste disposal and recycling, poor road conditions, traffic control, and the list goes on. The council needs to work diligently to identify the challenges they are faced with the constituents in mind, priorities need to be established. From there, forecasting and planning in such a way that will save money over time is possible. Grants are an excellent way to fund projects in our city. However, it is hard to search for and obtain grants for necessities when they haven't been identified. She would work together with her fellow councilors to develop a transparent and sustainable comprehensive plan to give Ellsworth citizens the most value for their dollar in our city in both the short and long term. John Stein, what are the greatest challenges facing Ellsworth?
I've received a number of emails with specific concerns. I think we've all seen the streets, the sidewalks, the traffic. But I think the more overarching concern is a lack of general plan and partnership. So with plan, I mean specifically the city's comprehensive plan. This is a nearly 200-page document, and like its name, it's comprehensive. It includes everything from feasibility studies to housing concerns to development and beautification projects. And it's needed for a number of reasons. One, it makes the city much more eligible for a lot of state and federal funding. The last time that this was modified was 2004, which is a while ago, right? We were all using the first generation iPod and writing on our blogs. A lot's changed since then. And without a comprehensive plan, we're kind of playing whack-a-mole with whatever comes into the city council chambers. We're going to tackle whatever's most needed right now. With a plan, we can be confident that those issues that we're tackling, we've planned for. We've given time for citizens to discuss and address. We've given time for bids to come back so we know we're getting the best prices for those projects. So a comprehensive plan in a partnership with those organizations and the city staff that are doing that work, like collecting surveys to see what our citizens actually want out of this plan. So we need partnerships with our local nonprofits, our city staff, and we need this comprehensive plan to finish. Thanks.
Gordon, the greatest challenges facing Ellsworth?
Well, they just about hit everything that you could imagine. So what can I say actually? Other than the citizens and the council has to work together to make this happen. So the biggest thing I see is all the division that's happening in Ellsworth. Between our kids, our community, the residents, I see it. I'm pretty sure everyone else does. Unless we have that communication against the community, come together, work together, we're not going to get this done. Ellsworth is going to fail. We see what the population looked like back in the 70s and 80s. We was at, what, 5,000, 6,000 people. We had a booming business happening in Ellsworth. But because of the separation between High Street and Main Street, not talking, not working together, we're losing that business. We need to come together and work as a community and stop being divided. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, the greatest challenges facing Ellsworth?
So I agree with mostly what was said tonight about this, but I really think that, I mean, planning is so important, and comprehensive plan is absolutely important, if for no other reason than it does provide grants from the state of Maine and to the federal government to a point. But Ellsworth needs to learn to pivot. In order for us to pay for new infrastructure and help with improving our school systems and things like that, we need to be able to pay for it. We can't just keep raising taxes to do that. We also cannot arbitrarily cut the budget 5% or any offense, but any amount of money, because you need to plan and you need to know what you are cutting and the consequences of those cuts. You can cut 5% out of the fire department, but you may have a fire engine that's not going to come. You can cut 5% out of the police department, but we have 94 square miles that our police department has to cover. So cutting them is pretty hard. But you can find ways of paying for these things by planning, by the city pivoting in a way that it's not just looking at retail businesses, it's not just looking at professional services, it's looking at other types of business to come into the city. We have a lot of land, we have a lot of options, we're a central part of our county. There's a lot of different types of business that can come to the city of Ellsworth. Good business development plan, a good look at our future for the city of Ellsworth will help create the ability for us to do that, and to bring in a much more diverse tax base to pay for bills.
Thank you. Question number 2. What is your vision for Ellsworth's future, and what will be the council's role in trying to make it happen? Tammy?
Thank you. I'm going to go back to the capital improvements that we need to tackle. In order for the city to grow, I think that us improving our capital infrastructure is necessary. By restoring the capital improvement plan, The council can begin planning and prioritizing and finding the ways to fund these projects. I think we need to do some creative financing that includes grant monies, federal and state fundings. We have some great staff that can write some great grants that can help us get that money, and they know where to find that money. We need to look at our debt schedules and structure the financing so that it's the least impactful on our citizens.
Thank you. Kristen will answer next. Kristen's vision for Ellsworth is multifaceted. She sees a healthy and robust downtown economy, which includes a fully funded library, inclusive, safe, and attractive walking and biking ways for our out-of-town visitors, those needing ADA regulations to be met, and our neighbors who rely on their own 2 feet for transportation. Strong collaboration between the council and city leaders, department heads, and those in our community who are experts in their fields, possess a passion around certain topics, and/or are willing to volunteer their time for the betterment of our city. An emphasis on grant seeking and ample council support for any and all grants our city qualifies for, and that leadership sinks time and effort into attaining. Improved road conditions and traffic control all throughout, adequate and affordable housing, folks being able to use our public waterways and their private properties to the best of their own benefit, all while paying the least amount of taxes possible, a trash and expanded recycling system that meets the needs of both the constituents and the environment, a bustling city with infrastructure to support the development needed to support this growth. This barely scratches the surface, but we can get there with a detailed, comprehensive plan. Ellsworth is only going to continue to grow. Folks who visit love it here for obvious reasons. With growth, everything is impacted: waste management, stormwater systems, roadways, traffic control, and so on. Our city council needs to have a plan in place to practically handle that growth. When forced to react, far more money is spent than if a plan were in place that had allowed for ample time and information gathering to choose the best option for our city. In last night's council meeting, it was alarming that the auditors had lured the city to a nearly $7 million undesignated fund. When asked how much should be left in the fund at all times, an answer could not be given. Without that information, the council is unable to decide how to utilize those funds or if they should be utilized at all. The taxpayers have historically been charged exorbitant amounts of interest in order to borrow to get us through. Meanwhile, we had undesignated funds sitting unused at an amount more than adequate to cover our needs. This is unacceptable. The city should be aware of all monies and know how and when they can be used. The council should also be privy to this information at all times. John Stein, what is your vision for Ellsworth's future, and what will be the council's role in trying to make it happen?
My vision for Ellsworth's future is consistent with almost all of the survey results that have been gathered for the last 2 decades by a number of different organizations. I first started looking into these a few years ago when it was my responsibility as Vice President of Part of Ellsworth to release some of these surveys, to help write them and collect the responses. And overwhelmingly, people wanted affordable housing, walkability, road improvements, traffic mitigation, development and access to green spaces, and the development of our waterfront and turning it into something really usable and beautiful. So that's my vision for Ellsworth's future. How does the council make that happen? Well, we take advantage, first and foremost, of federal and state funding. As some of the other candidates have said, many of us were in the chambers or watching the meeting last month when the council passed 4-3 against a motion to accept $50,000 for the Community Resilience Partnership resolution last month. This was essentially a no strings attached grant. For projects that we were already working on, for projects that we could have used this funding for and recouped the $50,000 for something else or given it back to taxpayers. There's a number of these grants available. They're not that difficult to get. We just need the willpower and the voting power to pass them, to use that grant funding to help us fund the development that our citizens want to see in Ellsworth. Thank you.
Gordon, your vision for Ellsworth's future.
Jesse pounding a dead horse on all this stuff. All this works together. I can go through the infrastructure, I can go through all that stuff, but all that's already rolls in motion. Comprehensive plans has to be updated, yes. The city charter has to be looked at and changed so we have more control of certain organizations and not organizations, but certain boards so we can have an input on it. But without the people involved, none of that's going to be done. It just isn't. So 3 years down the road, overcoming Ellsworth, you don't know yet. You won't know in years. Because that's out there. It's 3 years away. How are you gonna? So, I'd like to see it come back to what it used to be. How to do that? They've already mentioned everything. I don't really need to keep mentioning it. It's just, I'm in the dead horse. That's what we do. So, how does city role come to that? I think by the city, the council coming out to the people and talking to you, or making us available. I'm going to make sure I'm available, and anybody that wants to walk up to me, I'm going to voice your concerns on the council. No matter what I can do, I will do that. People right now in this community are scared. The older community members are scared to voice their opinions because they're afraid they're going to get crapped on by the rest of people that don't agree with it. That needs to stop. And by doing that, you need to help us. You need to be involved. And we're just a servant. You are in charge. And that's when we're going to make a difference in Ellsworth. It's the only way we're going to make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Beal, your vision for Ellsworth's future.
I would like to see Ellsworth fill some of those empty storefronts and empty land lots that are, have been available for years, and see the change in Ellsworth to a vibrancy that it has, but absolutely could have more of. And I agree that the green space and the walkability of Ellsworth, it's very important. I mean, people are going to get around to the downtown, to High Street, and up on Margaret Street. They need to be able to get there. They need to be able to get there safely, absolutely. But I think that the way that the council can work on that, again, is partnerships, relationships. Public-private partnerships have done a lot in this city, and working with the federal government and the state government, and not just applying for grants, but working with people and staff and others in the community that can all get together in organizations. We have Ellsworth Business Development Corporation, which is a great corporation that probably not many people know about in Ellsworth, but it's business owners in this city that get together and they help with business development. They help their ambassadors to our business climate. They right now are trying to help the Council of Business Development plan. There are a lot of different relationships that can help us move forward and have some of the things that we're talking about as far as walkability and good infrastructure. We just need to get together and figure out ways of doing that.
Thank you. John Linehan, your vision for Ellsworth's future.
I'm going to go back to finances, because to me it's very simple. If we don't get people so they can afford to live, that's not going to make much of a difference. These other things people are talking about. 5% cut in taxes is nothing. I just got this off the internet yesterday. It's actually based on the latest inflation data from the U.S. government. This is from year to year what our expenses have gone up. Gasoline, 18.2%. Groceries, 13.2%. Utilities, 33.1%. Just those three major items that every family needs is 21.4%. A 5% cut is nothing to do in the budget that we have here in Ellsworth. And I think the problem, there's two ways to look at this. Some people think government's the solution. I think government's the problem. I'm for smaller government, less people involved, less departments, and more money in the citizens' payroll, in the citizens' pocketbook. I'm also running for the State House of Representatives. If there was a federal office I could run for, I'd run for that too, because I'm concerned about all levels of government. It's too big, it's too intrusive, it's too over-regulatory. And it all goes back to money. I also have a state of Maine income tax elimination pledge. The first bill I sponsor as a representative, if elected, will be to totally eliminate the state income tax. New Hampshire does it, and other people do too. Just like we could eliminate 5% of the city of Ellsworth for that pledge. It's all about controlling your money, watching your finances, and getting a handle on things. It's about watching your spending. Your spending determines your ending. We need to stop the spending here in Ellsworth.
Thank you. Question number 3. What should the city do with its American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds? Kristen Lyons, this one first. There are a limited number of ways in which ARPA funds can be used. Kristen thinks particularly with water, sewer, and broadband, there are plenty of ways these funds can be used. As part of a comprehensive plan, the council would need some diagnostic information on these systems in order to know what and when certain areas will need maintenance, upgrades, replacement, or new installation. During the pandemic, the lack of broadband infrastructure became very apparent when many citizens were forced to work and school from home. We cannot allow that to happen again. We are living in technological times. Almost everything is fully digital or has a digital option. Everybody needs reliable internet. Water, sewer, and broadband are expenses that Steve will face regardless. The need to have a plan in place only grows with the development of our city. Why not use these funds to begin the conversation, forecasting and planning around these major systems that we will always have to upkeep, rather than spending taxpayer dollars to formulate these plans? Otherwise, we can continue to be reactive and cost ourselves far more in the long run when these things inevitably break down and we are blindsided by exorbitant expenditures. John Stein, what should the city do with its American Rescue Plan Act funds?
It's a great question. There's still a lot of them out there. Hancock County got about $10 million. There's still $860,000 available in Ellsworth. Let's go back to early 2020. There was an option for the Keep Being Healthy grant from the state. Ellsworth applied for and got about $25,000 for that, which was great. You know, it helped cover some payroll costs, offset those. Some towns like Dover Foxcroft got about 10 times that amount. Even like down south, Trebeague Island, island with 500 people, got 3 times that amount. So that wasn't quite acceptable to some of us in town, wasn't quite acceptable to some small businesses. So I worked with Healthy Acadia and some other nonprofits to create a new budget that we proposed to the city. They passed, and we were able to get another just over $40,000, which went to PPE, signage, and information, and other much-needed support for small businesses surrounding COVID. So I'd hate to see the city pass up opportunities to use ARPA funding. I'd love to see the city inject some of this money into an investment in our future, right? Those plans we talked about in the last question, developing our waterfront, improving infrastructure, things that we want to do anyway. This is a way to fund it. It doesn't burden our taxpayers so much. We can use it to build mixed-use buildings, projects to improve traffic conditions and walkability, things that make our city nicer for people who already live here and more appealing to people who want to move here. Thank you.
Gordon, what should the city do with its American Rescue Plan Act funds?
Well, the city received $860,000, but roughly $110,000 went to payroll bonuses, so we're at $750,000 right now. Out of that $750,000, turn around and return it to the tax-paying resident, which is about $5,049. You're only going to end up with $100-something bucks, right? So really, it would be good in your pocket, sure it would. Now that can be done by either a couple of ways. You can either pull budget money out of a certain department and pull this money, put that money into that department. That's how you can disperse it amongst the resident. Now, with that money, right now our library is super unfunded. That wasn't approved of. That would be awesome to go give to the library if you want to do it that way. Or you can split it. We need an ambulance. We need an independent ambulance by the city of Ellsworth. Right now we're being rolled over the coals by ambulance. It's crazy. So hopefully that, with it, because of the new police station being moved, we might be able to have an ambulance and facilities for it. That would go a long ways to buying a couple of ambulances. Now, animal control officer. Well, right now we've only got a police officer, and we have the small ambulance as our station for animal control. We really don't have an animal control officer per se. It's just make believe to get the cover. That could go towards that as well. And then you got a substation for the fire department. We need one out North Ellsworth. That would be awesome to put out towards that. You could do it that way. So there's a lot of stuff. Now, should we hang on to it? Maybe we should hang on to it for fuel systems this winter, since the inflation is so high, and those people that's going to need it's going to want some extra money. I think that's another good way of using it. There's so many different ways it can be done that can be used. Maybe we should just hang on to it and use it for emergency for those people that's going to be in need this winter. It's going to be hard for the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, what should the city do with its ARPA funds?
I really struggle with I really strongly believe it needs to go into capital improvements for the city. It needs to go into long-term improvements, those things that we can't afford to do because, you know, they're $500,000 but they last for 20 years or 30 years. And that's your storm drain systems, that's your sewer, your water systems. You know, I don't know about, I don't think that you can use the ARPA funds for operating money. And then also that's not usually a good idea because when that runs out, then you've got an item in your budget that you have to continue and then you have no way to pay for it. But capital improvements, infrastructure is so important in the city of Ellsworth. Storm drain systems, it stops business development because that goes over to the person that wants to develop. They have to get rid of the stormwater and our system doesn't work because it's antiquated. It puts it onto the backs of the person that's trying to develop business that's going to be paying the taxes. They can't afford it and they go to another place. So those types of things, those capital improvements that are long-term, are very expensive, and that are prohibiting the safety of our residents, but also it's prohibiting business development in the city of Ellsworth. I think that's the smartest place to put it.
Thank you. John Linehan, what should the city do with its ARPA funds?
Absolutely no question. It should be given back to every taxpayer, just equally divided, send them a check. It's about discipline, about understanding how to handle money. Again, I believe government is the problem. It keeps our money, takes too much of it, keeps it, and doesn't let us control our own destinies on that. In no way would I send that money for anything other than refunding it to the taxpayers. For the last year I've been in every city council meeting since the last election. And I started going to the finance committee meeting about probably 7 or 8 weeks ago, which is every Friday morning at 7:15. I wanted to see where the city was financially. Now, it's been a problem because they haven't had their audited statements done since 2021, believe it or not. They're almost ready to get that done now, then they can get 2022 done. I'm used to running businesses where I had daily operating controls where every day I knew exactly where every cash was, exactly what that business made. The city has not been handling its finances or even know where the finances are exactly making intelligent decisions. The city right now has approximately $6 million of undesignated funds with nothing to do with it right now. That's too much for the city of Ellsworth to have. That's your money and my money, and they need to give it back and stop taking more of what we got. So I would give none of the ARPA money back, other than just to the taxpayers, split it up. I don't care if it's $10 a piece. It's a principle of learning how to handle your money properly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tammy, what should the city do with its American Rescue Plan Act funds?
Again, capital projects. I feel like the city has been very reactive in funding some of these capital projects because something just broke. I think if you take the time and meet with the citizens as well as the council and look at priorities in the city and can incorporate these ARPA funds into the capital improvement policy and really prioritize the needs like the water, the sewer, the technology. I think one of the things, stipulations is you had to show how the ARPA funds or how there was a loss because of COVID. Well, we know that there was a loss of technology, and I think that we could look at expanding our fiber lines and our internet services throughout the city as well.
Thank you. All right, we'll move right into audience questions. How I've organized them is focusing on the ones that received the most variations on the same theme. So the first question is, should the city launch its own ambulance service? John Stein, answer that one.
That's a good question. We've been talking about it up here for a bit. I know City Council has talked about it in the last few sessions as well. I believe so, from what I've heard. I haven't looked into it too deeply. I've been busy this season. But it seems we're funding capital improvements like the police department relocation as well as the fire department relocation within City Hall as well. I think part of that fire relocation project includes a storage area for paramedics with the hope that they will be able to grow the EMS service, including the ambulance. I think that would be a good idea.
Thank you. Gordon, same question.
Question, please.
Should the city launch its own ambulance service?
Well, I've already brought that up. I think they should. Northern Lights taking advantage of the city. We should have it. And we will have the room for it, especially if we're going to do a substation. If we do a substation, we split 2 ambulances from one town, one end of town to the middle of town. There's no reason why we couldn't. Right now, we have property that's on the books that can be used for that. We should use what we got for property. We should just hold on to it like land. We should use it. Use it for the community. So yes, I think we should have an ambulance. Absolutely.
Thank you. Michelle, your thoughts on an ambulance service?
We've been talking about an ambulance service in Ellsworth for a good 10 years. And we've talked about partnerships with Capital Ambulance and emulating what Brewer has, or had, I don't know if they still have it. And that the problem with it is paying for it, because it's not a profitable enterprise by any means. And so it is another burden on the taxpayer. However, if the service with Northern Light isn't working and they're holding us hostage and they're actually costing us more money than it would be if we had our own ambulance service, then yes, I would agree with. But that is something that I would really look at, the cost of the infrastructure and the areas that we would have it in, if we can do the billing. There's so much to that with healthcare billing and Medicare billing and things like that, and whether or not we can even afford to get our money back if we even did that. We break even. So I would honestly need to look at it a little more before I answer that question.
John Linehan, should the city launch an ambulance service?
Yes, I believe there should be an ambulance service, but I don't believe it should be run by the city of Ellsworth. I believe it should be sublet or bid out to another supplier that can give us the type of service we need. I really, over my career in business, have had no confidence in government being able to run any enterprise. It should be privately owned business. A privately owned business person will keep track of their expenses, their control, their systems in place, and they'll make it a profit. So I would like to see us have access to an ambulance service, but not our own. I would bid it out to other ambulance services around, or possibly if there's none right handy here, there might be somebody that would be willing to start and open up an ambulance service, or two, so we could bid against it, put it out to a competitive bid, get the very best value we can get for our city, and I believe a better product would be done if we sublet it out to a private enterprise, and then hide it as we need it as government. So I would say, no, don't have our own, but have access to it through private enterprise.
Tammy, same question. Should the city launch an ambulance service?
I agree with Michelle. I'd like to have some more information on it. And I'd also like to know what sort of ambulatory services that we'd be providing. I know there's different levels, paramedic versus just transports. And if we get into transports, there may be an opportunity for an additional revenue stream. So I was there when we were housing the Northern Light in the fire department, and I know tight quarters it was, and we were looking at, the possibility of purchasing an ambulance, and it is really, really expensive. And again, you've got to really do a cost-benefit analysis to see if it's best for the residents of Ellsworth.
Everybody did that one, right? So. All right. Do you think the library is a vital resource for our community, and would you vote to increase funding in the future? Gordon, do you want to start that one?
Well, it's a mixed subject because now at the internet, right? Everybody goes to Google and get all the information you want. But a lot of people like going to the library, looking at those books, doing the research on their own. They like looking at that text. Do I think the library is very vital to this, to the city? Absolutely it is. I think there should have been funding for that. I don't know how much funding they need, or maybe they have to somehow pull in more people from outside. But yes, I do believe that the library should have funding. Again, the extra funds, $750,000, all right? Should go back to the people maybe. Should maybe split it. Help the library out. I mean, geez, they've been here for how many years? Let's keep them going. That's the way I feel.
Michelle, do you think the library is a vital resource for our community, and would you vote to increase funding in the future?
I do. I absolutely believe that the library is vital to our city. It's a place for research and education and culture, and it's a community base that people can gather. I really do believe, I had a couple of people email me and ask me if I would have cut the budget that just passed, and I can honestly say I would treat it exactly like I do any other department in the city of Ellsworth, because I feel all the departments are important. I could never say that I would ever cut the budget, but I would also say, though, that I would be a supporter of the library and its needs and its ability to progress and give what the city of Ellsworth should have out of its library.
Thank you. John Linehan, your thoughts on the library?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Do you think the library is a vital resource for our community, and would you vote to increase funding in the future?
I think the library is a very valuable part of our city for a lot of reasons. The heritage, the background that's been here for years. Again, I'm a lifelong Ellsworth resident. When it comes to the financial investment in that library, that was something you have to take a look at when you look at the total overall operating budget. What can we afford to spend as a community, and we have to prioritize what that can be. I wouldn't say I would cut or increase the library budget no more than I would any department without doing a line-by-line analysis of every department. And some would need to be cut, some would need to be, or none would need to be increased in my opinion right now. But you take a look at it line by line, you have to look at the expenses and see what we can afford to do. If we can afford it, I'm fine with it. If we can't, then we have to make some changes, just like we do in our own personal households as well. It's about managing priorities and about establishing budgets that we can afford and living within our means as a city and as individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. Lost my train of thought. Tammy, your thoughts on the library and library funding?
Yes, I believe that the library is an absolute asset. I use the library every day as I'm driving to Bangor. I listen to my audiobooks. I think if we could get the council and the library board to maybe work together to try to look at different ways to some different programming, maybe look at different staffing options, hours of operation. I know at one time that it was, for the city of Ellsworth, it was $85 per taxpayer in the city of Ellsworth. But the surrounding communities have the option to not fund the library at all, and I know we did start charging. I'm not sure it's enough to fill that gap though. So I think we need to find solutions to try to find that balance so the taxpayers of Ellsworth are not holding all of it's on the backs of the Ellsworth taxpayers. So I think we need to find some options. And again, I love the library, and if we could come up with some solutions, I think we can continue to have it to be such a great asset and resource for our citizens.
Thank you. John Stein, do you think the library is a vital resource for our community, and would you vote to increase funding in the future?
Yes, I believe the library is a vital piece of our community. If we start cutting into small pieces of our community like that, we cut into our community as a whole, and this is what we're all working on, is building a better community together. There's a ton of statistical data out there showing better outcomes, educational outcomes for children, for people of all ages in towns that have better funded libraries. They've helped all of us. There are people without computers, without internet, who utilize the library to apply for jobs, to look things up. It's a community space, and that is essential to our community. I think it should be in our comprehensive plan, a long-term funding goal, so that the library doesn't have to fight with the council every year to approve the budget. They need to be able to know that they're not going to have to let go of staff. They're not going to have to make massive budget changes or change the way that they do things on a whim because we don't have a plan for it. The library knows what they're doing. Librarians know what they're doing. They know what their budget should be. It's the council's job to ask questions to see if we can make improvements, but to improve that budget, not to cut that budget.
Thank you. Next question. How familiar are you with municipal budgets, and how would you balance responsibility to taxpayers with adequately funding city services? Michelle?
Well, I'm very. I was the finance director for many, many years, and then was the city manager, actually creating with Tammy the budget and presenting it to the council. It's important to, I mean, it is a balance. It's a difficult balance because the budget is the municipal budget, is the school budget, is the county budget, and all of that has to be taken into consideration for the taxpayers and mill rate and values and things like that. And it's not an easy task, but it's a very obviously worthwhile task because you have to have a budget. But it's not as easy as people think it is. But there is a good way of balancing. I guess the biggest thing to say is that cutting the budget, and every year, this is what we go through. We go through that budget, every department, line by line, looking at the requests from the department heads, my recommendations as city manager, and then looking at the overall budget and what the taxpayers can afford, and having to take into consideration what the school department is going to come in as, and the county budget is going to come in as. It's a difficult task, but it's done every year. It is never done without a lot of thought and without a lot of work by the council, because they're also looking at needs, progress, all of those types of things. It's such a broad document. Again, and I'll say, cutting the budget is not always the best way to balance the budget and to decrease taxes or keep your taxes. It's other ways of looking at funding and revenue to bring in to help offset. And it's federal money, it's state money, it's public-private money. There's a lot of different ways that you can do that.
John Linehan, how familiar are you with municipal budgets and how would you balance responsibility to taxpayers with adequately funding city services?
I'm very familiar with the municipal budget, not as familiar as Michelle or as Tammy's, I'm sure. That was their job for years. But I'm very familiar with budgets, financial statements. For years, that's what I've done, is run businesses and you run them by the numbers. And as far as the city of Ellsworth, to me, it's not a difficult thing to manage a budget. It's about establishing priorities. Once you establish your priorities, what your needs are, not your greeds, not what you want to have. You can't have everything, just like your own household. Once you establish your needs, you look at it line by line, and you determine, can this be reduced or can it not? And you have to make decisions. That's why we have people that make those decisions on that, not machines that do it. I think it's very easy to balance that out. It's very easy to establish priorities. And when I look at a situation like I said, I've been to the last 12 city council meetings since the last election. The last several weeks I've been to the finance committee meetings every Friday morning because I wanted to see where we were financially. I couldn't get the exact answers because they haven't got audit statements, but they're coming. But I didn't see any glaring major problems there other than we've got several $1 million in undesignated surplus here. And that is just flat out too much for the city of Ellsworth to have in there. That came from taxpayers in most cases, and it shouldn't happen like that. So my goal is to get a handle on that, watch the spending very closely. I don't think we can afford increases in fees, increases in taxes. We just cannot afford it. People cannot afford it anymore. They're at their limit, and we're going to have another tax revolt at Boston Tea Party if it gets much further on in the city of Ellsworth and the state of Maine. Some of the expenses come from the mandates coming from the state. That needs to stop. We need people on the council to step up and tell the state to take a hike, keep your money, we're not going to do it because we can't afford it. So we've got to watch the money from both ends, keep a close eye on it, and people have courage to step up with what they believe in. Thank you very much.
Tammy, same question.
Yes, I'm very familiar with budgets. It was one of my main duties while working at the city, and I would meet with all of the department heads. They would present to me. I would ask them the hard questions. Once I got all of the department heads' budgets, I compiled this big book. It had 300 to 500 pages in it. I remember sitting there in Michelle's office and the previous city manager's office and was literally taking our red pen, trying to whittle it down because we need to provide something to the council that is reasonable. There were many years that the council came down to having to cut probably $300,000 to $400,000 of local road monies because they were trying to balance the budget. I don't feel that that's a good way to balance your budget, because you're just being reactive and kicking the can down the road. I think that we need to have reasonable and realistic budgets so that we can move forward in the city.
John Stein, how familiar are you with municipal budgets, and how would you balance responsibility to taxpayers with adequately funding city services?
I've worked with several organizations, as I've said earlier, for city appropriations. I've helped to create budgets with Acadia for grant funding that came through the city. I've been doing my homework over the last few weeks and have learned a ton at the last few city council meetings as well, including the need for undesignated funds, otherwise known as emergency funds, even though they may be several million, are still very important for a city to have. I would, of course, defer to and listen to city finance directors. I would defer to people who have worked and served in city council for a number of years, because they know how to go about talking about the city budget. I would listen. What I would bring to the table are partnerships that I've worked on in the past, knowledge of things like Department of Transportation funding at a ratio of $9 to $1 that the city spends on improvements. There's money there that the city can use to save taxpayer dollars. I know that taxpayers in Ellsworth are concerned about the mill rate going up, but I also know that if they're receiving great infrastructural improvements for their dollar, they can be okay with that. We don't want to raise the mill rate. We want to work on these infrastructure improvements. There's ways to do it through state funding, through federal funding, and I believe that's the way to go. Thanks.
Thank you. Gordon, how familiar are you with municipal budgets, and how would you balance responsibility to taxpayers with adequately funding city services?
I'll tell you one thing, I'm not familiar with any of the city finances, other than what totals I've heard. I've never worked with them, so I don't know. I know the council is responsible to look through them and come up with a conclusion, can the city afford it? If it cannot, they go back and ask those departments, look, we need to do something about this, because we can't put this burden on the taxpayers. Now, one thing that's happened this year is the mill rate didn't change much, but the property values increased. That's how they got around it. That's why your tax bill is higher. I think that was wrong, because at a booming type of real estate boom that shouldn't have happened. We got hit for that because the real estate values increased because of COVID and everything boomed. Now, how do you go about looking all that through? Well, you go back to the beginning. You look through every line by line item if you can do that. Can we do that? I know right now, the city charter, we have to change that so we can look at certain boards and certain places, like the school budget went up 1.5 million. We need to have more information. We have to have more control over that, because we just can't hear, oh, well, we got to be 1.5 million. Well, why? Where's it going to go? Who will spend it? Where is it gone? We need to know that. We just can't hear a total. So that's one place that we need to fix. And the other thing, I think, is the comprehensive plan. Once we look at that, we can see what the future may be and how that money will be spent. Am I familiar with the financing, how to change it? No, but working together with the council and the people, what they want, I think we can come up with a very good budget. Thank you.
Thank you. We often hear officials talk about cutting expenses in order to not increase taxes. What about the other side of the equation? How could the council facilitate bringing more revenue to Ellsworth? John Linehan?
Well, I don't think revenue is the problem with the city of Ellsworth. That there are not ways that the city of Ellsworth can increase its revenue. Number one, it needs to be much more business friendly than what it is. It's way over-regulated here in the city of Ellsworth. It's difficult for new businesses to start. There's different assessed areas in the city of Ellsworth. Beyond Cards Book, they have an impact fee that they have to pay to go into a facility out there. For example, there's all kinds of vacant land out around Walmart and out in that area. And I believe a lot of it's because there's an impact fee that shouldn't be there. It just prohibits business from coming in and taking advantage of the stuff that's in there. If you come this side of Cards Book, there is no impact fee. So they're not treating people equally, and I think the regulatory process for businesses, I know there's been developers putting up businesses in apartment buildings right now, and I've watched what they're going through. It's excessive. They're private businesses that are putting in a good product for our city. They shouldn't have to jump through a lot of hoops to do it. So the way to create revenue is not with taxes, it's by having real businesses come into town, private businesses, not government fees, and that will increase the revenue of our city in the long term.
Thank you. Tammy, how can the city bring in the money?
I feel like if we bring in some new commercial businesses, and I'm not just talking retail, but different use types of business, maybe some biomed facilities, some call centers. We have a lot of empty spaces that are already there that they could move into, some changes in the building. But I think if we go ahead and build that, we can collect on the taxes, real estate taxes, as well as the personal property taxes to help increase the overall tax base.
Thank you. John Stein, same question.
Repeat it, please.
And we often hear officials talk about cutting expenses in order to not increase taxes. What about the other side of the equation? How could the council facilitate bringing more revenue to Ellsworth?
Yeah, I'm a fan of small businesses. I always found it really a pleasant experience to work with our code enforcement fire offices while starting Fogtown Brewing. We could have used some additional incentives. I think a lot of other towns in Maine have helped provide businesses that bring community together and that bring tourism dollars in as well. Have created some incentive plans for businesses like that. I think incentivizing people to move here as well and to stay here rather than leave. These are things like competitive schools. These are things like supporting our library and community centers. Make us a more attractive town with better roads, better walkability, a more beautiful riverfront that we can use and connect green spaces together. That will allow people to really feel good about living here. That will bring people in from the outside. The more people that are here, living here, working here, contributing, will bring more dollars into the city.
Thank you. Gordon, how could the city increase its revenue streams?
By using what we have. Just use the facilities that we have that's empty right now. Put incentives out there for them to come and use those facilities. There's no sense to spend money to make money. We already have what we got. Use it. Bring the people in. Reestablish these stores that's left. Reestablish these empty buildings. Reestablish High Street. Reestablish Main Street even further than what it is now. There's so many empty stores. Why not use it? Why build and spend money? Why? I just don't understand. Spend money to get money. It just doesn't work. You see how the inflation's gone? That doesn't work. Use what we've got. Build it back up. Get them to come in. Be business friendly. It's the only way you're going to do it. I mean, do I have a plan for that? But all together we can work that out. We can make that happen. Why can't we? We was there once. Why can't we do it again? There's no reason we can't. It's simple as that, the way I look at it. Run the city as a business. Run the city as a business. Get the people to come in. Bring more money in. That's the only way you're going to do it. And that way, you can use the buildings that's already empty. There's no reason why you couldn't. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, how could the council bring more revenue to Ellsworth?
By diversifying our business environment. I had mentioned before that Ellsworth was always a retail mecca, and we actually used to have University of Maine help us with the figures of what we needed for retail, what type of retail that we wanted. We're just expanding on that, and we can't do that anymore. We don't have brick and mortar stores anymore. Everyone's doing everything online, and so we just need to rethink what we want to bring into the city and incentivize those things, like Tammy had said. We have Jackson Lab here, and there's a lot of biomed businesses that could come in that would complement that. For research, there are the Trenton Business Park has some really great manufacturing companies in there. There's no reason that Ellsworth can't. So there's a lot of things like that we could absolutely do. And then also, again, I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot, but there are ways to pay for things, not cutting them, but paying for them with different types of partnerships and relationships. Not just grant money, but actually bond money from the state, bond money from the federal government. I know that that's not popular, but we had a $21 million wastewater treatment plant that we needed to have in the city of Ellsworth. We were required to have by the state government. We ended up being able to build that for $10 million because we got $11 million between the state and the federal government to help us. There's a lot of that can happen.
Thank you. Next question. Does a joint city manager / police chief position make the best sense for the city and its needs? And I would ask that this stick to the concept of having a shared position as opposed to an individual's role in it. Tammy, do you want to start that one off?
I'm actually not comfortable answering that. My husband is a police officer in the city of Ellsworth, and so I would ask to pass on that one. Thank you.
Understood. John Stein, does a joint city manager police chief position make the best sense for the city?
Not necessarily, and here's why. There's a problem of optics. So I was actually nominated by an ad hoc group of concerned citizens a number of years ago to address the city council, to be a voice for questions and thoughts from some members of the community. You know, it wasn't a battle, did we lose, did we win, did this motion pass anyway. We won because we asked the questions, because we had the conversations, because we thought about what do these optics look like? What do these optics look like several years later when a city manager who was also a police chief helps to push through the new funding of the new police building, dipping into emergency funds. Is this the right move for the city? Probably. Do the optics look a little funny? There have been several news stories about it. This is something we need to consider. It's something we did consider. So, you know, right or wrong, it's what happened. I'm glad that we looked into the optics of it. I'm glad we had the conversations about it a couple of years ago. And I'm glad we can continue to have the conversations about it.
Thank you. Gordon, does a joint city manager police chief position make the best sense for the city and its needs?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Does it, Michelle, does a joint city manager police chief position make the best sense for the city and its needs?
So I don't think it's right or it's wrong. I don't, personally, being in that position, I'm not sure how a person has two jobs. It's a full-time, more than full-time position, the city manager is, and I'm just not sure how it's getting done. It seems to be. I mean, the city's not, I don't think the city is in a bad way because of it. I'm just not sure how it's being done. This is the best way to say it.
John Linehan, does a joint city manager police chief position make the best sense for the city?
Cindy, I had trouble with just the last part of your question. I knew you on the first part. I couldn't quite.
Does a joint city manager police chief position make the best sense for the city and its needs?
Yeah. No, I think they should be separate. I look at things from a different way. There's a conflict of interest that can't help but be when you're in those two positions and any two positions. At the city council meetings over the last year, I brought up a couple of things that I perceive to be conflict of interest. Some between the school board, some between the council, and I think there needs to be a separation of those things right there. So I think that's a perfect example. That should not happen. I think our current Glenn Mosher is a very good guy. I like Glenn personally. I think he's capable of doing either job, but I don't think he should be doing both jobs. He should do one job or the other.
Thank you. Next question. Do you anticipate having to recuse yourself from any routine council business, such as consideration of the school budget, because of a potential conflict of interest? John Stein.
If there are bills pertaining to licensing of new breweries, potentially, probably not. I'm also vice president currently of part of Ellsworth, and so if there were appropriations discussions, I'd probably recuse myself there. Otherwise, I don't have too many other connections that would be conflicts of interest.
Thank you. Gordon, do you anticipate having to recuse yourself from any council business?
I don't think there's anything that would, if there was, I would have to, but no, nothing I can see.
Michelle, do you anticipate having to recuse yourself from any routine council business such as consideration of the school budget because of a potential conflict of interest?
The only thing that I would have to recuse myself is if the city wanted to change law firms, because I manage it. But other than that, I think the funding, I'm on the chamber board and I'm on the board of EBDC, so funding for those organizations, I probably would need to recuse myself.
John Linehan, do you anticipate having to recuse yourself from any council business?
No, I don't.
Tammy Moat, do you anticipate having to recuse yourself from any routine council business such as consideration of the school budget?
Yes. With my husband being a police officer, I want to explain that I've been with my husband pretty much the entire time that I was at the city of Ellsworth, and even in the different positions that I've had, and I've even sat across the table during union negotiations, but we shut that down when we got home. We know where those walls were, and we didn't discuss things. Actually made it kind of nice. So I think I would have to recuse myself for anything that's going to affect my livelihood. So if it was union contracts, I think I could vote for, purchasing some cruisers or police equipment. But again, anything with my livelihood, I would have to recuse myself. And I'd also, again, have to recuse myself for anything that have to do with the law firm. The council or the city was looking at changing law firms.
Thank you. What is your position on the approval of relocating the police department to a leased space at the intersection of High Street and Buttermilk Roads? Gordon, do you want to start that one?
Would have been better when they could have bought the building when it was offered to them. That's one thing. But they didn't take it. That was under a different manager at the time, and they didn't take advantage of that. They needed a new space. There's no doubt about it. It's been there since 1935. All right? At that time, there's how many police officers? They're up to 20. Cramped space, they needed it. Now, I agree with it. But is there a way we can use different finance and different funds out there that, for instance, sell off some property we have, put it towards it, change it, use that money. Don't let it just sit there. Put it towards the balance of that money, of that facility. That's the way I look at it. But yes, they needed it. There's no doubt.
Thank you. Michelle, what is your position on relocating the police department to a leased space?
Oh, they absolutely need it. They've been so crowded in that space ever since the renovation was done in 2000, something like 2001. And it was too small and they moved in there for the renovation. It doesn't give them privacy, it doesn't give them a place to talk with the people that come in to the station. It absolutely, there's no place for their cars. It's absolutely necessary.
John Linehan, your position on relocating the police department to a leased space?
Yeah, I was just at the council meeting this week where it was approved. I was totally in favor of the move to get the police department out and expand it for the existing fire department right there. Where I think the mistake was made is the council has acted like a government instead of like a business, and this has been kicked down the road for years and years and years and should have been taken care of years ago. That being said, I felt it should have been put out to bid, a list of exactly what the police department was looking for and what the requirements were, and it should have been put out for bid publicly in our community. I know the Main Coast Mall has space available to do it. The Mill Mall up here has a lot of land behind their existing facility. They could have, if they wanted to, I don't know if these places wanted to, but certainly they're business people. If there was an opportunity to put a new facility right on the property they've already got, and they put their mind together, if it made good business sense, there's an opportunity, I think, for either one of those two parties to put a bid together. Would it have been less than what we did last night or what was approved? I don't know. There's only one way to find out. You can compare apples and apples, you put the specs out there, and then you see what the best value is for the taxpayers. And I don't know, but I would have not approved a $3 or $4 million item unless it was bid out with apples and apples to other local people in the area. So, but I'm totally in favor of the move, just I don't think the taxpayers got the best bang for their buck possible.
Tammy, do you want to take this one?
All I can say is yes, it was definitely needed, and then I'll keep it at that.
John Stein, your position on relocating the police department to a leased space.
The station needed to move. That was pretty clear last night at the council meeting. Was this the right space? Wasn't really clear. There were some hesitations. Was it an intersection that was too busy? You know, was this the best space? Were the renovations a good deal? We really heard from only one expert who happened to be the same person that was doing the renovations, who's the same person that owns the building that is being leased. So this didn't really go out to bid in a process that I'm familiar with the city. Was it part of the comprehensive plan? We don't know because we haven't updated it. Was there something that we should have done before? You know, are we planning on this improvement? Will we still need it after 20 years? Will the lease change after 20 years? There were a lot of unanswered questions, and this pushed through quickly because it wasn't part of any comprehensive plan. I'm not sure if it was the right move or not, but I don't think the council went about it in the right way. I think it happened too quickly. We approved a lot of improvements, totaling 1.2 million, something like that. You know, almost a fifth of our emergency funds with the city. We're not sure what those funds are designated for because we don't have a plan for them at this point. Did we need all the improvements? I'm not sure. I didn't hear a lot of different opinions from different experts, and this was a big move, so we could have done it better, I think.
This one's from the audience here tonight. How will you as a city councilor support our educators / school board in providing the highest quality education to our youth, further enhancing Ellsworth as an ideal location for families to live? Michelle, do you want to start this one?
Communication with the school board is really the best way to do that. I mean, your school department in your municipality is obviously educating our children should be #1 for our community. It's very expensive, absolutely is, and people are always, you know, there's a $1.5 million increase in the budget, but there's a lot of reasons for that to be happening, and there's a lot of regulations that the school department has to put up with from the state, and in some cases, the federal government. So much is mandated to what they do. So, you know, a good communication, a good understanding between the council and the school board, good communication between the superintendent and the city manager is incredibly important. So when it comes down to budget time, there's a preliminary understanding of that budget. There's not a line item budget, and I will tell you that it would be impossible for the council to have a good understanding of each line item in the school budget, which is as big, if not bigger, than the city's budget. So a good understanding, good communication, understanding their needs, understanding their regulations, that would be the best way to support our school department. And yes, it's important. They need to be progressing. They need to be giving our children the best education. And that reputation, by the way, is what brings people into the city, is what brings businesses into the city. That's like the #1 question that gets asked when businesses come in and when they're trying to bring employees in is, what is your school department like? It's incredibly important to this municipality.
Thank you. John Linehan, how will you as a city councilor support our educators / school board in providing our highest quality education to our youth?
Well, I just led a campaign to get the school budget voted down. It was unsuccessful, that's fine. The people voted on it. And it's as simple as ABC for me when it comes to school, the Ellsworth school system. A is achievement. If you look at the 2018-2019 Department of Education scores in the basics, arithmetic, English, and science, approximately 50% of the Ellsworth High students are not meeting the minimum standard that the main Department of Education has. So I think it's a flunking grade for the quality of product we're putting out for almost half of our students. So the achievement is not there by the main DOT. That bothers me, because like Michelle said, I think we should be putting a quality product together, and that's not. Budget, I think we're expending too much money for the budget for the schools. Again, I think I look at things from a business perspective. If I had a business that was putting out a poor product, I wouldn't want to keep increasing the budget every year. if the results weren't increasing. That's where we are in the Ellsworth school system right there. So I wanted the budget voted down so we could analyze some of the other areas. But I disagree with Michelle that I think it should be a line-by-line item budget. I think the council should have input on it. And the third thing is the curriculum. I think the curriculum is very poor curriculum in the city of Ellsworth. It's gone away from the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's into social engineering, SEL, it's into the critical race theory, it's into a lot of things that socialist Marxist things are being taught that's filtered down through our entire education system in the country, the state of Maine, and also in Ellsworth. So it's easy as ABC, the council needs to put input to make it the quality program it needs to be. I'm for people's choice and people's vote, and I'd like to see competition between the private sector and the public to increase the quality of our education system.
Tammy, how will you as a city councilor support our educators/school board in providing the highest quality education to our youth?
Well, I think that we need to have a relationship with the school board and the superintendent. I think that the school board or the superintendent, as they did in the past, used to come to a finance committee and share their year-to-date budget reports so that there were no surprises at the end of the year. That is also an opportunity to kind of look at their line by line. They may summarize some of it, but you have a better idea of the different cost centers that they are challenged with. I think that the state has a lot of mandates that people aren't aware of, and having that relationship so that the school board can explain to the council and to the public what those mandates are, we will all have a better understanding of how their budgets are built.
Thank you. John Stein, same question.
I went to Ellsworth High School actually for the first time a couple months ago to get signatures from some of the teachers there for this campaign ballot. And they were excited to talk to me about what my views were and what their views were and what they needed from the city, which was mainly just support in letting them teach. They were tired from a couple of years of COVID. They're teaching because they love to teach, because they're good at teaching. They know how to teach. They know how to create their budgets. They know what materials and resources they need. The way that the council supports them is by passing our budget, not by holding a budget approval hostage for little or no reason. We support them, we pass their budget, and we don't mess with their curriculum. We're not, educators up here in the city council. We don't have to nitpick what they're teaching. They know their curriculum, they know how to teach. We just need to support them.
Thank you. Gordon, how will you as a city councilor support our educators/school board in providing the highest quality education to our youth?
Well, that's a deep question, but you've seen what's happened in the past 2 years between the school board and the citizens development and parents and kids have a lot of arguing, a lot of fighting, all right? That needs to stop. The school board's got to listen to the parents. They've got to listen to what they're asking about their child. Do I support the school? Yes, but we've got to change our tactics, how you speak to the citizens. There was a point where a person brought up to the city council about having an outside community, having some say on the school board. What happens? Well, there's nothing but the school board fighting with the outside people saying, well, if you want to say, move to Ellsworth. You don't have to say unless you move to Ellsworth. Well, that's just wrong. Your child comes to the school. There should be some type of say other than getting up there and speaking. I think there's a lack of communication amongst the school board members to the citizens. And I honestly looked at school choice. School choice will save close to roughly $12,000 per student if we go to school choice. $12,000, about $6,000 to $8,000 for a person to go to private school. It costs us $19,000 a student year. That's quite a chunk of difference to change. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 hours is a long time, guys. What will you do to engage Ellsworth's youth in city affairs and community life? John Linehan.
Well, as I started Constitution Hall not quite a year ago, we have a lot of emphasis on constitutional teachings. We've had 3 or 4 different classes. Some have been 6 weeks, some 8 weeks, some 4 week. We're doing one right now, it's a 3-week course. It's all about teaching people where the Constitution came from, the history of our nation, and they're excellent courses. And I think those are courses I've offered. I've been to the council meeting and I've offered to do it during the day so that they could bring the students to the school system, they could bus them there, we could do it on-site for them. But I think the students need to get an understanding of what our Constitution is, where it came from, what our founding fathers had for original intent. And historically, it used to be civics class and teach those type of things. So I think we engage the young people, first of all, by giving them a history lesson, teach them what happened, where our nation was founded, what our founders had in mind when they did that. And there is a biblical Christian background and values. Matter of fact, for 250 years before our Constitution, the New England Primer was used to teach and educate people. All that ties together, and I think our youth have lost the history, the heritage of what made our country great. So I would educate them, show them how to do it, and how can we restore and make America, make Maine, make Ellsworth great again by reviewing our history. History always repeats itself. So we don't want to keep making the same mistakes. We want to learn from history and improve as we go forward. So it's about education, which we try to do in Constitution Hall.
Tammy, what will you do to engage Ellsworth youth in city affairs and community life?
So, I think that we need to include them in our processes. I believe the school department right now, my son brought home something that he can be part of the Rotary Club as a student member. I know that Ellsworth has some students on their, or a student on their board as well. I think maybe looking at that opportunity as or option for a student that would be interested in municipal government would be a great thing. I know right now that it is really hard to find people to work for municipal government. I know they're having an issue with trying to find a finance director, and maybe bringing interns in and showing them the ways of municipal government would be a good option for them. So that's all.
Thank you. John Stein, same question.
Yeah, so Heart of Ellsworth started a student board position last year, and currently Drew, somewhere in the audience, is the second iteration of that. They're real voting members with projects and committee appointments. Young people are awesome. Younger people than me, I should say, are awesome. They are already engaged. If anybody was at the Rainbow Crosswalk, the infamous Rainbow Crosswalk City Council meeting last year, you know that there were a ton of high school students there, members of the GSA club and others, who were consistently making the most coherent arguments of much more coherent than many of the adult arguments that were being made. So they're in our community, they're engaged with local politics, with municipal goings on. I would love to see some initiative to bring in students to participate on council committees and subcommittees. I think that would be really incredible for them and also for us and for our city.
Gordon, your thoughts on engaging Ellsworth youth?
How to engage Ellsworth youth, that's it.
What will you do to engage Ellsworth's youth in city affairs and community life?
Wow. I'm not a teacher, I'm not an educator, so how do you get them to come in? I guess you'd have to go to them. You'd have to go to the school and talk to them directly, see if they're interested in doing this. Explain to them what you're looking for, the future for our city, be a part of it. That's the only way I could think how you're going to engage them if you go to. I've talked to several from the park when they walk through and they give my opinion of what's happening in Ellsworth, and some of them are sad about it. So I would think that they would want to make a difference. So yes, I think going to the students, going to them, talking to them. They already have several groups. I mean, they have their own school or class president and what have you. So they're already engaged as working for the municipality that way. Now, if you can go one step further, get those people to come in, those kids come into the city and work with us once in a while, I think that'd be awesome. Why wouldn't it be? So that's the way I think you're going to engage them. If you actually go and talk to them, that's the only way you're going to get them to come out. Because they like to have their own little world where they are now. It's already being dated enough with all this other information that's driving them crazy. Why not throw a little bit more at it, bring them into the city, see how the operation of the city works. I think that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, how do we get the kids involved?
I think opening doors to make them feel like that they're heard, or make them heard. I agree with John. I watched some of the video on the crosswalk, and those students knew what they were talking about, and they were passionate about their community, and it was great, and I think, more of that, and having them be at the council meetings, and working with the school departments. I used to do career day at the high school that, honestly, not a lot of kids came because they didn't think city manager was a very exciting job. But the ones that I talked to, they asked some great questions about my job and what it was like to work for the municipality and what it entailed. And I think opening those doors and being there to answer their questions, I think that's the best way to do that. And having them, I love the idea of having them on some of our committees. There's no reason they should be on the rec committee. They should be on some of these planning committees because it's their future. Hopefully they're going to stay here and it's their future. Let them have a voice.
Everybody have a chance, right? The order is getting all messed up. Next, audience question. How do you feel about transparency in local government? Tammy, you want to start that one off?
I think it's necessary. I mean, it's tax dollar money and it needs to be transparency. However, I do think that there needs to be, similar to what we have for Ellsworth, is the EDC board that can go ahead and make negotiations with, because they have their own set of money, they can negotiate for different businesses and in order to bring it to the city. But for transparency of money, where all the money goes, anybody can walk into the finance office and go through all of the bills they've paid. Everyone has the ability to look at all of that information, look at the meeting minutes, and now with the technology that we have, everyone can, it's just much easier to provide that information to the public.
Thank you. John Stein, transparency in local government. Your feelings?
Oh, it's so important. For a number of years, I've been really excited to work with different nonprofits that have interacted with the city. I've been really frustrated by some of the lack of transparency with the city. Struggling to get information back from the city, struggling to get all the information that was available back. So information transparency not only with citizens but with the partner organizations that work in our city. And not only just available information, but actively pushing information out there, doing surveys of our citizens. What do you want to see? What are your priorities right now? How can we incorporate your wants and needs into our comprehensive plan? That's all part of the two-way door there that is transparency. There are closed sessions, obviously, legally, I understand. There need to be some discussing certain private matters, salaries and things like that. Obviously, that will always be the case. But we can do much better effort of letting people know when certain sessions are happening, so people can prepare themselves, so people can gather information, ask questions in a timely manner, and really have discussions about the way our city is moving forward.
Thank you. Gordon, how do you feel about transparency in local government?
It's very important. Without that transparency, the citizens can't react to act towards the councilman or even the people in those departments. It's very important. Sometimes you don't get them involved because it's private matters and what have you. So that's here nor there. So you got to understand that. I think we could have done a better job, for instance, on this police station. They could have got the word out better, more, so more people could have come to the discussions that was prior to this council meeting. With that said, I think we did need the police station. Location, maybe not. But I will add one thing to that, is that I think somehow we should get that written in where there might be an option to buy the police station after so many years. Because if we're going to put that much money into the building, we should have that option. I think that should be put in there. But transparency, absolutely. I think it should be. And I think that's the only way you're going to get people to interact with it, have that transparency.
Thank you. Michelle, how do you feel about transparency in local government?
Oh, I think it's absolutely necessary. The council works with the taxpayers. I mean, we're the representatives for you, and how can we represent you if you don't know what we're doing and we don't ask you your opinion on things? And so transparency is absolutely, as long as it doesn't negatively affect private citizens and business development, because there are times when businesses want to come to Ellsworth, but they can't announce it. They have to do their due diligence, and so the city can't announce that someone's coming in and looking at a certain lot or something until it goes to the planning board, until it's ready, that business allows us to do that. So there are certain circumstances, but they're few and far between. The one thing that I will say is that the citizens also, they can't just sit back and wait for the information to come to them. Citizens need to read the Ellsworth American, read the Bangor Daily, come into City Hall and ask questions, talk to staff. You need to do that too, because that communication needs to be a two-way street. You can't just sit there and wait for the city to remember to tell you everything that's going on.
Thank you. John Linehan, how do you feel about transparency in local government?
I'm 100% behind transparency. That is my life. Everything I do is readily open. I have 2 or 3 Facebook pages. I have websites. Everything I do, I put right out there. I'm a committed follower of Jesus Christ, for example. I accepted him as my Savior when I was 26 years old. And about a month ago, I had a gentleman tell me, he said, John, he said, I really like what you're talking about finances and the money like that. We need to get a handle on that. He said, I wish you'd tone down your religious stuff like this. I said, well, you know what, that's me. I mean, I don't believe I'm religious, but I have a personal relationship with my Savior Jesus. I share it with people. I don't hide it. I don't hide it under a bushel. I'm proud of it like that. And because of my faith and trust in Christ, I know I'm going to go to heaven. And someday physically I die and leave this earth. So I'm transparent in everything. I'm not going to waver on one of my convictions, my beliefs, to get a vote and influence a vote or anything. I let it all hang out there. Everybody has my cell phone number. I've got the maximum amount of friends on Facebook. I can't put any more on, they don't allow it. So I'm very open. People welcome my house, and I'd be the same on the council. I'm 100% total transparency. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's getting near that time, so we'll conclude on a hard-hitting question from the audience. What is your favorite movie? John Stein. Judgment moment.
Yeah. I learned recently, this is not my favorite movie, but it's my favorite fact that I learned recently. Pet Sematary, Stephen King, was filmed in this area. There's a scene where they're taking somebody in or out of City Hall, which is Ellsworth City Hall. I went back and watched it. Pretty cool. Pretty scary.
Casting call was in this theater for that movie.
It was right here, casting call?
Yes.
Good morning, now. Still learning.
Thank you. Gordon, your favorite movie?
Oh, God. Let's see. Actually, that was a movie, right? Funniest movie I'm thinking about back in the day, and it had to be Caddyshack.
Michelle, your favorite movie?
Oh God, please don't judge me. Love Actually.
Play on cable a lot in the near future. John Linehan, your favorite movie?
Well, I'm glad you said favorite, not funniest, for these guys that have been speaking right here. My favorite movie of all times is Braveheart, Sir William Wallace. And I love the part where he screams, "Freedom!" And you know what? If you see my truck around, it's got the American flag, it's got the freedom fighter on the side. I'm involved with this race for the city council, for the state house of representatives, because I want our freedoms back in America. So William Wallace was an inspirational character to me. My favorite movie. I would watch it every night if my wife would put up with it like that. So Braveheart is my favorite movie. Buddy.
Tammy, your favorite movie?
Again, don't judge me, but it's The Notebook. And, The Notebook. It's kind of a love story. And the funniest one is Christmas Vacation. Gonna love that one.
Well, thank you to you all for participating and being so candid on all the issues, and everyone for coming. You should be able to find contact information for anybody up here. If when you get to your question, you can reach out to them in the newspaper or on the various social media streams, and thank you for participating. No. Sorry. Thank you all for being here this evening. Just a couple of closing statements from Heart of Ellsworth. I just want to thank our sponsor, Eaton Peabody, and our longtime partner, the Ellsworth American. They have been with us the entire time. This is our 5th year doing this, and we are incredibly lucky to have a local paper, weekly paper, here in our downtown. It's not a common thing in this country anymore, and so we are so lucky to have the Ellsworth American. I just want to let you folks know that this evening every year, I'm the most proud of our community. To sit up here and to be able to support healthy discourse, to be able to hear everyone's perspective, and to be able to listen. This year, we had no booing. We had no applause in between. You folks were great guests. I am extremely proud of this program because it really supports who we are as small town America. And we are all Americans, and we are so fortunate to be a part of this great country. I also really want to just make sure that everybody understands that this event is run every single year by the Heart of Ellsworth, and that we do have a lot of community partners, but our organization is a nonprofit, and we work very hard to make sure that this stays non-partisan. And I think that we have done a great job with a great audience this evening. Also, to bring on the lighter side of things, our next event is coming up next month. It's our 5th annual Downey Cider and Cheese Festival, which will take place on the 11th and the 12th here all over downtown. There's more information on our website. And lastly, I just want to ask everyone, if you are so moved this evening, to please donate to our organization. You can do so online, or you can do so at the table outside on your way out. So again, thank you everyone